Happy Memorial Day. I love what Tracy said during our prayer time. It's not really a prayer request, but at the same time, it is. We come to this time. And so I want to do something a little different this morning. If you would, I want to ask all of you to stand. And we're going to say our Pledge of Allegiance together today for Memorial Day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then if you would, you may be seated, except if you served in our military in any form or fashion, would you please be standing? We have a couple who are unable to be with us today. Of course, Mr. Gene Grizel, if you would continue to pray for him and remember him. And then Kelly Hagan has also been a part of our military. But if you would, thank you, Gary, if you would give them a big hand. Of course, those three that we mentioned are living still. And in the time of Memorial Day, Memorial Day was originally a day that was spent to celebrate those who gave their life during service. Those who were actively in the military in a war when their life was taken or when they passed. And that's what Memorial Day was originally founded for. And the South and the North had different ideas of it originally. And then, of course, we have several other holidays in which we celebrate the military. The Veterans Day is, of course, any of those who are celebrated or any of those who have fought in a war or in our military. Then, of course, we have Armed Forces Day, too, which is a day in which we celebrate those who are actively in the military. But as we were talking this morning with Marcia and Rita and my wife, I said, I could take about 4 more days a year if you wanted to celebrate our military and what they continually do for us on a daily basis in defending what we have. It's kind of funny, the word freedom starts with the word free. And to be completely honest, there's nothing free about how we obtain freedom. There have been a lot of men and women who have given their life to make sure we have what we have today. Having been to other places, not very many outside of America, do not get me wrong, Honduras being the biggest one for me, we are very blessed in what we have here in America. Very much so. And Memorial Day is kind of that start of summer for a lot of people. As we said, tomorrow there'll be festivities down at the cemetery and at the park, and the pool opens tomorrow. It's that start of summer for so many people. I firmly believe that's why we're short on numbers today. We have some who are starting their summer at the lake, traveling, vacations, different things going on. Celebrating the start of these warmer months, the start of this time of summer. For some, summers get insanely busy. For others, it's a time of relaxation. When we come to this time of summer and this time of Memorial Day, and I don't go through very many of our military holidays without thinking of probably one of my favorite movies. And one of my favorite movies is a movie called Saving Private Ryan. Many of you have seen it. I absolutely love this movie. Okay, the whole basic premise of the movie is a mother has lost 3 sons to the war, and the commanders get together. There's the 4th son in the military who parachuted in, who got captured, and the commanders get together like, we will not let her lose all 4 of her sons to the military. And so they put together a special unit led by Mr. Tom Hanks, which is probably one of my favorite actors. Everybody knows him as Forrest Gump. He's led by Tom Hanks, and their whole mission is to go find Ryan. To go find Private Ryan. To bring Private Ryan home, and to make a mission, as I disappear here, to make a mission out of just retrieving him and bringing him back safely. Well, they get there, and Ryan's squad was sent on a mission to make sure the German tanks didn't get across a certain bridge. Is their basic deal. That as the tanks were coming across, they were to blow the bridge up, let the tanks fall into demise. And he said, look, I won't let my squad down. He said, I'm not leaving till this mission's done. And a long heated scene began between him and Hanks, and basically Hanks' character says, look, I'll stay with you, but you stay out of the line of fire. We got to get you home safe. We'll do your mission, and then we're all out of here together. Well, that mission doesn't turn out to be as easy as they want. And a lot of Hanks's outfit is killed in the line of action. There's a very gripping scene on the bridge that they're going to blow up, where Ryan is trying to save Tom Hanks's character. And Tom's like, look, you've got to leave me. You've got to go. You've got to get out of here. I promise to bring you home. We've done your mission. And then the last words he says to him are, earn this. Earn this. This isn't just a Hollywood movie. Fritz Nealon and his 3 brothers from New York State all saw action during that war. 2 Nealon brothers were killed on D-Day, while another one was missing in action in Burma and was presumed dead. In the space of 1 week, the mother received 3 telegrams, and the 4th son was reported as missing in action. Fritz was located in Normandy by an army chaplain named Reverend Francis Sampson and taken out of the combat zone. As it turned out, the missing brother was not dead, but a prisoner of the Japanese and was liberated by the British Army. So Saving Private Ryan, which most people know that, is based on a true story. But as we talk about Memorial Day, like I said, any military holiday, I can't help but think of that movie. And those words always ring through my head. Earn this. And so I kind of want to talk about that a little bit today. What did he mean by earn this? Open up with me to Ephesians chapter 6. And we're going to read some words from Paul this morning to the church at Ephesus. And Ephesians, and Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus, is probably one of my, James is my favorite book, but some of the things that Paul says in this book, in his church, to the church at Ephesus. The church at Ephesus is one of the only ones that Paul just absolutely reams to start his book. He's like, look, you guys, you're missing the boat here. You're missing the point. And so we're getting towards the end of the book in chapter 6. And I want to read verses 12 and 13 of chapter 6. It says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand firm. And then he goes on to break down what the armor of God is. And if you grew up in church, it's something you learned in Sunday school. You made the breastplate of righteousness. You made these things, and you wore them. Made you feel like a knight in armor when you were done. But I want to talk about why Paul even mentions putting yourself in armor. The conflict that he's talking about. Because what Paul is talking about to the church at Ephesus, and I firmly believe to all of us still today, is that there is conflict at the heart of our lives. At the heart of what we do in ministry. At the heart of America's freedoms. There's conflict. Always has been. And always will be. I mean, a couple weeks ago I told you about Macksville and the child that was drawing as he was speaking. And he drew the angels and demons in the church. And he asked the kid, is this what you see? The kid's like, yeah. There's a conflict within our lives for our spiritual well-being being fought. There's a conflict in America. Things we don't see on a daily basis being fought for the freedoms that we have. And Paul knew this. He talked about this struggle against evil a lot in his letters to the churches. In his letters to Timothy. Paul's imagery reminds me, I think, of these military movies we talk about. The same type of conflict, the battle between what we call good and evil. The small soldier is hunkered down behind a hill waiting to fight. I want you to hear someone read something again. He says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness." Paul makes evil sound like an organized government. I mean, that's what he does, right? That he makes evil sound like an organized government. And this goes back to something I've said a lot in my life. You know, especially when it comes to tragedy in people's lives. Especially when it comes to tragic things happening. You hear it said, and you know, all the time, that God will bring something good out of this. Okay? And I'm okay with that saying. The saying that God has a purpose is where I draw a line. Whoa. Whoa. God didn't have any part in the evil that took place. Okay? Does that not mean He can't take the evil and make it good? No. But He didn't have any part in the evil. He didn't take part in the evil. This is where giving credit where credit's due. If you don't think that the evil in our lives isn't an organized government, and I don't mean our government, okay? Don't think I'm going political. I'm talking about the spiritual evil. He's organized. He knows what He's doing. He's fighting it on a daily basis. And guys, He's been doing it long before we were thought of. Long before we were thought of. He has a game plan. You know, and we all can talk about people who have served. Because of that steep price that freedom and goodness had. We can all talk about the people that served. Whether it be religious people in your life that have fought for your spiritual freedom. Whether it be military people in your life that have fought for your physical freedoms. We all can talk about people who have served. We can talk about what they've done and how they've touched our lives. A lot of us can name the mentors and spiritual leaders in our life. Some who are still living, some who we call on a daily basis. Some of you are that spiritual mentor and that spiritual leader for somebody else. You're currently serving in that capacity. You're fighting a fight, whether you like it or not. And if you serve in that capacity, one day this weekend will be about you. And that's tough to swallow sometimes. You know, I can remember going with my grandma. My mom has 3 brothers. And she has a sister that lived about 5 days. And so I can remember going with my grandma out to Marcia's grave on Memorial Day weekend and putting flowers out. I can't tell you how many times I heard my grandma say, "You'll never know how much you changed my life." Until I got old enough and had my own, I never knew what 5 days meant. I never knew what 5 days would be like. But I don't know if any of you drove by my house yesterday evening, but there were some young men in my yard spray painting cardboard, doing something that I told Amber I would do so that I could run up and down the sidewalk with Zoe and Isaiah trying to teach them to ride a bike. And as much sweat and huffing and panting as this big guy was doing by the end of it, that's just but an hour of 5 days that I wouldn't trade. No, we haven't mastered the bike. No, we still like to lean, and I think if Dad let go, we'd be on the concrete. But I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't get rid of it. The service that people offer in our daily lives. Sometimes we don't even notice that we're being served. That somebody is reaching out and doing things for us that we'll never even comprehend. We'll never even know about. And one day, this weekend will be about them too. Because not all conflicts are visible. Paul, the struggle that he mentions against evil is not a visible conflict most of the time. Most of the time it's a conflict that's fought through prayer and then unseen things that we'll never know until that day in heaven. But guys, if you look around, there's evidence all over our culture of that struggle being fought. Between drugs, between the breakdown of the moral family. If you don't think it's happening, you've got to look. You've got to open your eyes and look at the world that we live in. The moral values of a family are slowly falling apart. And for a nation that's what we were built upon, was the value of family and the morals upon which our family operates day in and day out. To watch the decline of that. In the last 2 months, over the last several years of my life, I've got to be a part of several premarital counselings. And there are people in our church that can tell you that I have boldly professed to them that in all the marriages I've done, okay, which Matt and Lindsay's made 22, 21 of them were still married. And I took a lot of pride in that fact. Over the last 2 months, that has now become 18. The decline of the family in our society is an evidence of the evil at work in our lives, day in and day out. The drugs, the illicit things that go on. And then one that a lot of us don't like to think about, the consumerism. And the way it runs amok. The greed that gets to people. That is evil at work. The greatest struggle we fight is for spiritual values. And I don't tell you that to take away from what the men and women in our military have done for us. But Gary said it in a prayer this morning. We're scared if you look at this world and you look at, let's just look at our country and the way some of our spiritual values are being taken away. As a whole, okay? They can't take the spiritual value out of you. That's left to you and your decision. And what you decide. But as a whole, as a society, spiritual value is not near where it was when I was a kid. And I'm not that old. So I would be interested to hear from some of you, and I have from older people, but how much more valued church was when you were a kid, or how much more valued a family was. What was the role of mom and dad versus what is the role of mom and dad now? I mean, think about how many families you know that big sister is mom. Let's think about how many families we know that big sister's mom and dad are still in the house. Not because mom and dad can't or won't, but because they can't. Because we're founded in a society where consumerism is such an evil that mom and dad can no longer afford to be mom and dad. That's tough. But it happens in our society every day right now. There is a fight, and there will continue to be a fight for these values all over. And that is not a visible fight. And I'm glad that fight is going. Because freedoms, if they're not defended, are lost. Freedom, if not defended, is lost. And the ultimate cost for that freedom is only borne by a few. And some of us can name those. You know, most of you know that I have a kid I adopted who is now in the Navy. And I think about that every day. I just got a phone call the other day. He's going to graduate June 24th. Probably get to come home for about 10 days on the 26th. And then he knows where he's going for his first place. And those exact words I got. I've been a long pause where I was like, where? Because immediately my gut turned. Okay, he knows where he's going. Where are you going? Well, actually, I've done well enough in school that I'm going to be a lead. Which means I'll be working on circuitry board out of jets that I can't be rocking and moving for, so I'll be stateside in San Diego. Now, does that mean he's free and clear? No. But did that make me feel a lot better? You bet it did. You know, but if you ask him, his desire is to go live on a boat for a year somewhere. He really wants to. He wants to do it. Okay? And Gary's probably back there when it's not a boat. But that's what he wants to do. He wants to serve in that capacity. He wants to do it. And I'm happy. I'm proud of him. But I know what that ultimate cost is. And in that movie, Saving Private Ryan, the end of it, I'm going to ruin it if you haven't seen it. I'm sorry, it's an old movie. I wish you'd already seen it, because I'm going to ruin it. It flashes forward about 50 years at the end. And Private Ryan is standing with his family amongst thousands of white crosses in a cemetery for World War II. He's at the graveside of Tom Hanks' character. And he's remembering those events in France. And with tears in his eyes, he turns towards his wife and says, "Did I earn it?" Each of us matters. Each of us have a goal and mission in life. And sometimes when we hit rock bottom, we don't know what that goal, and we don't know what that mission, and we don't know what God has in store for us is. Some of us are on cloud 9 in life, and we still have no idea. That's because the story that God is writing is so big and so massive. But I don't care whether it's a 20-piece puzzle or a 5,000-piece puzzle. If there's a piece missing at the end, it's still frustrating. I don't care whether the puzzle took you 10 seconds or years. If there's a piece missing, it's frustrating. And so as God writes this big story, and He puts together this grand masterpiece, this puzzle, as I've said before, He doesn't need us to finish it. He'll reshape it any way He has to. But if you think for a moment, does it frustrate you when a piece is missing? Because we all matter. We all have a purpose. God wants next time we gather for Memorial Day, for that next person to be remembered as well. He wants that when your life and your earthly story is written, that Memorial Day matters to somebody based on you and your life and what you did. He wants the puzzle to fit. He wants the puzzle to be beautiful. But He knows that there's a conflict and a fight that will go on for all of eternity. Until Christ says no more. Until Christ says no more. It's the ultimate freedom. Our faith rests on His blood and His sacrifice. No greater love has any man known than one who will lay down his life for his friends. I have 3 gentlemen sitting here in church today that I would go to battle for in my life. I think they're pretty solid dudes. Okay? But if you ask me if I would absolutely lay down my life for them, I'm going to swallow hard before I answer you. Not because I don't love them, but because I know what that price is. And my Savior did that. And my Christ did that. My Lord did that for me. And His hope, still today, is that we don't have to do that for each other. That because of peace, and because of grace, and because of mercy, and because of love, we shouldn't have to do that anymore. But we do. For physical freedoms, for spiritual freedoms. I can tell you story after story that I hear on the radio, I read in news articles of Christians in other countries giving up their life because they confess Jesus. We hear about it happening in the Middle East over and over right now. That conflict is there. But then if you read the small text on the screen, our faith rests on His blood. Have we earned this? Most of you are going to look at me and go, whoa, there is nothing we can do to earn this. You are correct. Our Bible tells us that you can't earn it. But God didn't say, okay, now live life and act like you can't earn it. He said, live life and strive like you can. Go out in the world and do something like you're trying to earn it. Because when you get to heaven and you walk through those gates, you're going to look at us and you're going to look at everybody around you and go, did I earn this? Because it's going to be that beautiful. It's going to be that majestic. I am a guy, you can ask my wife, who goes through most of my life waiting on the other shoe to fall off. I do. Things get too good and I look at my wife and I'm like, something's going to happen. She's like, would you quit? I do. I live life waiting for it to happen. Because I know my past. I know my history. And I have to look at my life and go, what did I do to earn this? And I don't say that in reference to bad things. I know what I did to earn most of those. I don't know how many times we've laid in bed and I've asked her, how did we earn our kids? I mean, I'm blessed. How did I earn the friends I have? Because all 3 of them can tell you stories I've done to really tick them off in life. We ain't got time for those stories, and I don't want to embarrass myself, so. But we could. But yet here they are, by my side. And these 3 get a lot of phone calls when I'm frustrated. Actually, it's a headset with a computer. I know my true nerdiness, but guys, I need to talk. I got to vent for a minute. Are we living life like we're going to earn this in the end? Are we living life striving for the greater good, striving for the bigger picture? Because our faith rests on His blood. Whether you're doing it or not, whether you're striving for it or not, your faith rests on His blood. He's already done it. He did it about 2,000 years ago. So whether you're living like you want it, whether you're living to desire it, whether you're striving for it, it already happened. What good is it if somebody gives you a brand new car and you don't ever start it? So that's what Christ wants to do. He's giving you a brand new life. I want you to use it. So that Memorial Day, this weekend, is about you. Yes, the original point and the original meaning of Memorial Day was that for our fallen men in the service, men and women in the service, But we all know in our society, Memorial Day has become so much more than that. A time of just honoring those who have touched our lives. As you spend this weekend doing that, as you go out to the cemetery tomorrow, and we have that time of celebration and the celebration at the park, that's what I'm asking you to do. Is not only remember those who have physically altered your life here on earth, but remember the one that gave it all for all of us. And no greater love has ever been shown than that right there. That while we were yet still sinners, Christ died for us. For us. That doesn't exclude anyone. For all of us. All. Pray with me. Father God, we thank you so much for this opportunity to be in your house. We thank you that we get this privilege to come together. And Father, as a family, as we lift each other up, help us to guide, help us to protect, help us to be that family that fights this fight together. That we are aware that this fight is not always visible. And so we care enough to not just say, hey, how you doing? But to genuinely ask, is there anything I can help with? Anything I can pray for? As we fight a somewhat invisible fight in our day and age. And God, we do thank you for those men and women who have given their life physically, for our physical freedoms here in America. That we have the opportunity to come together as a family, wherever we choose, and whatever style we choose, to worship you and give you glory. Father, we thank you so much. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.